chattering women. "Oh, certainly," she politely acquiesced. "But don't you think they'll want you, with all the other men away? Now's your opportunity to be made much of." "I don't care to be made much of just because I am the only man." "Oh, but you would always be more than that, of course." "I'm not more than an old fogey when the young fellows are around. They will take no notice of me at tea time." "Well, I'm getting used to it. I'm getting to know my place. If that was your place you would soon vacate it." "How can I vacate it?" "When people begin to make me for an old fogey, they'll not have the honour of my company in their houses." "That's very well for you. Wait till the time comes. And I suppose you like it, anyhow. You seem to enjoy all this, waving a hand around, as if you were a girl who had never seen anything. I'm sick and tired of the whole show." "They don't have any more to do with it. Go home." "Home? What home have I?" "A lovely flat in town, they tell me, where you give the best dinners and ladies' theatre parties and things. Phew! I am hardly ever there. I hate the racket of London in the season. I'm not up to it nowadays." "And you wouldn't have me stranded in Piccadilly at this time of year, I presume?" "I'm obliged to spend the winter down south, and by the same token I must soon be getting off, or these east winds and damp mists will play the deuce with my bronchitis." "Oh, it's bronchitis, is it? I knew it was something. I suppose you've been coddling yourself with hot rooms and all sorts of flannel things. That's the way people make themselves tender, and get chills and chest complaints, and get old before their time. The doctors insist on flannel, the natural wool, all of them. The greatest mistake in the world. I used to wear it because I thought the doctors ought to know, and I was always getting colds. Now I never let a bit of wool touch my skin, haven't for years and years, and never know what it means to have a cold." "That is contrary to all the traditions," he remarked seriously, addressing her handsome back, for she was still supposed to be writing her letter. "I can't believe that it is due to not wearing flannel, Debbie. It's your splendid vitality, your being so different from other people." "Nothing of the sort. You try it. Not just now, of course, with winter beginning, but when warm weather comes again." And so on. The hostess broke in upon their tete-a-tete, while they were still engrossed in this interesting topic. She was drawn into it, and made a disciple of by Deb, who attributed all her own blooming health and practical youthfulness to linen underclothing, combined with plenty of fresh air. And after all, since letter writing was hopeless, she did go out to lunch with the Guns. Claud remained alone and disconsolate by the library fire. She was due to leave the house next day, and left, although conscious of a strange hankering to stay, and during the interval gave Mr Dalzell no further opportunity to talk about his bronchitis and other things. He was not aware that she was to go so soon until she was gone, and then he found himself with livelier feelings than had stirred his languid being for many a day. He was not only annoyed and disappointed as being deprived of the refreshment of her stimulating society, he was incensed with her mode of departure, which seemed to imply an intention to evade him. "Does she still think that I am after her money?" he asked himself, with scorn of her mean suspiciousness, "just because I was magnanimous enough to ignore the past?" He went down south to play a little at Monte Carlo and cruise a little in the Mediterranean, to kill time through the detestable winter, which made itself felt wherever he was; and she went to London to see about Francie's gown, and up north to Bracing, Scotland, and down to Wellwood for Christmas, and back to the racket of London in the spring, and neither of them had spent a lonelier time in all their lives. Quite a fresh and peculiar sense of homelessness and uncomforted old age took possession of them both. All through the kaleidoscopic transformation scenes of the seasons, through which she moved magnificently, old maidhood notwithstanding, she was unconsciously seeking him. It was her impression, from all she had heard of his tastes and ways, that he could not keep away from that common rendezvous of his class and kind. She did not find him, but all the same he was there. He returned from his winter haunts sooner than his wont, while still the April winds were full of menace for him, exposed himself to those winds seeking her, caught a chill, neglected it, a most unusual thing, and fell into an illness that confined him to his bed for many weeks. It was not until June that Deb heard of it. He was truly so much of an old fogey now in the society of which he had once been such a distinguished ornament that his disappearance was long unnoticed. And when at last someone noticed it, in Deb's hearing, the light and callous way in which his trouble was referred to went to her heart. Knowing all she knew, one of her generous impulses came to her on the spot, and an hour later she was at the door of his chambers, inquiring after him. His man, a very jewel of a man, received her at the door, gravely, cautiously, keeping it half shut. He reported his master mending, but still weak, and not able to see anyone. Females of all kinds were sternly discouraged by this prudent person, from force of old habit. "Oh, of course not," said Deb offhandedly. "Just give him my card, please, and say I'm very glad to hear he is not as ill as I feared." On pain of dismissal from the best service he had ever known, and he had known it now for a long time, Manton had to find the lady's address. As soon as it was supplied to him, Claud sent for her to come and see him. "Are we old enough now to dispense with chaperons?" he wrote, and the sight of his handwriting after all these long years moved her strangely. "If you think not, bring the deafest old post of your acquaintance. Only do come. I haven't had anybody to speak to for a week." "Of course we are old enough," commented Deb, as she read the words. "The idea of fussing about chaperons and that nonsense at our time of life!" And she proceeded to array herself in her most youthful summer dress, which was also the choicest of her stock, taking the utmost pains to match toque and gloves, while full of indignation against his friends for so shamefully neglecting him. Boldly she ascended to his sitting room in the wake of tight-lipped Manton, who presently brought tea, and at intervals tended the fire, apparently without once casting an eye upon her. Claud was up and dressed in her honour, while fit only for his bed. In the midst of the refined luxury that he had gathered about him, he looked but the ghost of a man, worn with his illness and the fatigue of preparing for her. It was one of those English summers that never answered to its name, and he sat in a sable-lined overcoat, considered more respectful than a dressing gown, in a heat that almost choked her. But with swelling heart she hurried to his side, and, after greetings, drew a chair close up to his, took the hand he silently extended, and held it in a long, warm, maternal clasp. Manton retired and shut the door. The invalid lay back on his cushions and closed his eyes. The visitor, watching him, detected an oozing tear, the first she had ever seen there. "How did it happen?" she crooned, and followed the question with many more of the same sort, to which he replied as to a mother or a nurse. "It's this beastly climate," he complained. "It upsets me every time. though this is the worst bout I've had yet.